Today we're going to be talking about an interview that took place between Adam from Marfugo News and Stephen Ben Danoon from Israeli News Live. And if you haven't seen this interview yet, they talk about what's coming here shortly in September, October, November, and next year. And this just isn't their theory or something like that. They both have outside secular sources, credible sources, that are all agreeing on something major happening this fall. You know, this whole COVID-19 thing, it's all smoke and mirrors because they're using this COVID-19 thing as a catalyst to prepare the world and to preserve all their assets so that way they can rise up out of the dust, out of the ash after this whole thing is done and begin their new world order. So I'm going to let them speak, and I'm going to interject here and there what the Lord is showing me that relates to what they're talking about. And this video was 30 some minutes, and I edited it down to a third of that size so that way we can stick to the main points. So what you're about to see here is actually a shortened edited version. So if you want to see the whole version, you got to go to Stephen Benden's channel to watch the whole interview. I will put a link in the description box below.
You know, obviously you get people that send you information that's basically somebody else's YouTube video of them and their theories. The stuff that we're getting is not theories. It's actual documents, or it's actual people that are basically, you know, in the know, and they are seeing what is going on right now. So what we, why we kind of reached out to you was because of your video that said, prepare for impact. When you said that, you basically said a lot of the same things I have said, not only last year, but 2 years ago. If you go back through my videos, what I was told was that basically by around this 6-month time period, that the world would be unrecognizable. Around this 6-month time period, that the world would be unrecognizable.
And he's right. This world is completely unrecognizable now than it was a year ago. A year ago, we had professional sports everywhere. People packing out stadiums, sitting right next to each other, bunched together. We had schools that were open, that were filled to capacity. We had an exploding economy here in America. There were no laws saying, hey, you have to wear a mask inside this building, or inside that building, or outside your house. Everywhere you go now, there's social distancing. Everywhere you go, you see people wearing a mask. Look around at all of our businesses. The majority of them are all gone. The ghost towns have dramatically increased all throughout the world compared to where they were last year. The majority of all of our monuments representing our history have been torn down. All democratic cities are on fire. We could just go on and on and on, but just think about how things were a year ago. If you want to go out and do anything a year ago, you could do it with no restrictions. But now there are all kinds of restrictions. And let's say, for example, you want to go to a movie theater. Movie theaters aren't open no more. First time in history. They're not showing movies no more. All those buildings are just empty, abandoned shells. Pretty eerie.
And now here we are, it's unrecognizable. The same source told me that we would have earthquakes, we would have asteroids, and we would have extreme weather triple, all in a very short time period. And now, fast forward 2.5 years, we're basically there. And it's only getting worse. On top of that, about, I would say 4 or 5 months ago, 6 months ago, we had a person, I shouldn't say what they are, we're trying to keep her anonymous, and they are a financial auditor. They actually audit government transactions, so DHS, FEMA, these kind of things, and they look over these things and sign off on them. What has crossed their desk is essentially a cleanup, a ton of money, and this is for this year's budget, for cleanup for debris from a class 2 gas giant. Serious debris cleanup. And we're not talking about debris like some stuff on the side of the road. We're talking about debris as in like cities crumbling. You're talking about the amount of money spent is cleaning up half of the planet. It's more money than any of us will ever imagine to have. Even some of the elites will not have this much money. You have all of the events with all of the other countries trying to go to space, trying to go to different, almost every country is trying to get to the moon, trying to get places, trying to get somewhere in this space race. I think it's personally because there is something way, way big coming.
Well, I've heard some of those things as well, though, and that the technology that we have and things of that nature there, and some of the levitation craft that they have, that some of the elite are planning on literally going out away from the earth when the bad parts of this system come through.
So basically, the leadership in all these countries and their elite are trying to find ways to get off this planet before it gets really bad. They don't talk about this here in this interview, but come to find out, the Earth's crust has been heating up substantially, and they were not planning on that to happen. And what's happening now, these bunkers that they built underground, they're beginning to find out that these bunkers are not safe because they're starting to leak, water's starting to get into them, they're starting to break down because the rocks that they built them under and in are starting to shift and break apart. So now they're going to be exposed to what's coming here upon the earth. So now they're desperately trying to find ways of getting off this planet so that they can cruise around in space while the earth is going through God's judgment. But unfortunately for these elite, they think they're going to dodge all this stuff. They're not. If they think they're going to sit there in that ship and avoid the judgment of God, they're sadly mistaken, because one of two things are going to happen to them. One, there will be an asteroid that will be redirected right at them that will destroy that ship, or God will do something to that ship and take them down. Just look at that Titanic. We know about that. Okay? Or when judgment comes upon the earth, there will be angels that will go to that ship and gather up all the people on that ship and bring them back to the earth so they can be judged and then thrown into hell when it's all said and done.
Robert said to me, I believe he's retired Navy. I think he's a cryptologist, if I remember right. He speaks Spanish as well. He said, in Parada's notes, he said that you'll start seeing them coming in more and more frequently in the end of 2020. He didn't say what month, just the end of 2020. He said in about every 13 or so asteroids that come by, one is going to hit the Earth. He said, but they won't be planet killers, but they'll be significant in size. They'll cause a lot of damage. And he said that will go on, and in his point, he said it can go on up to about 5 or even 7 years. Even 7 years. Even 7 years.
Did you hear what he just said? 7 years that this sequence can last for. This sequence of asteroids hitting the Earth. And in the midst of a bunch of small ones, a few big ones, which will fulfill what happens in Revelation chapter 8. Can this possibly be the sequence of judgments that will transcend over the 7-year tribulation period? And if that's the case, heads up. Heads up, brothers and sisters. For when we see these things come to pass, as Jesus said, look up, for your redemption draws nigh. And if our spirits are already redeemed, now our bodies need to be redeemed. So Jesus wasn't talking about our spiritual redemption. He was talking about our bodily redemption, the rapture resurrection. Everybody, if this is the case, this is God's wrath. This is not something controlled by man. This is done by the hand of God. And if this is God's wrath, we're now pointed to God's wrath. So the rapture resurrection has to happen. 1 Thessalonians 5, starting in verse 9. For God hath not appointed us to wrath, but to obtain salvation by our Lord Jesus Christ, and that comes on the day of redemption of the rapture resurrection of the church, who died for us, that whether we wake or sleep, did you hear that? I'll say it again. Whether we wake or sleep. It's talking about those who are awake, those who are alive, who are raptured, and those who are asleep, who have died in their bodies, they are resurrected. We should live together with him. Wherefore comfort yourselves together, and edify one another, even as also ye do. It says here that we are not appointed to wrath, and that when the wrath comes, we will be raptured out of here. And before this all happens, we should be comforting one another with these words. That's what I'm doing for you right now. We see the dangers coming. I'm showing you the dangers that are coming in this video. But I'm also showing you too the hope and the comfort of what's going to come before the destruction hits.
He said Mr. Ferradas put in his notes, he could never pinpoint the calculation of the coming of this quote unquote Nibiru, but he called it Herboculus, because he said it constantly changes speed, slows up, speeds up, slows down, etc. But he said when it comes through, he said then, he said the poles will shift, he said continents will rip apart. He said that's exactly what he wrote in his document. They will rip apart. He said that will be when the devastation really comes.
Can this be the representation of what happens at the Revelation chapter 6, 6 seal earthquake? And it goes on to say in Revelation chapter 6, verse 12, And I beheld when he opened the sixth seal, and lo, there was a great earthquake, and the sun became black as sackcloth, and the moon became as blood. And Gil Gazard is predicting an event for March next year that will cause the sun to go black as sackcloth, and will also turn the moon to blood. And the stars of heaven fell unto the earth. That may be the representation of all the smaller asteroids that will be pelting the earth during this time. Even as a fig tree casteth her untimely figs, when she is shaken of a mighty wind.
And so I mentioned to him that my FEMA source said that there would be like rain of little asteroids, little small ones coming down, which was similar to what I was told with my source that works with the Pentagon. And he said he also wrote about that as well. He said, but they will not be devastating, but they will cause a lot of damage. But he said when it comes through, he said then, he said the poles will shift. He said continents will rip apart. He said that's exactly what he wrote in his document. They will rip apart. He said that will be when the devastation really comes.
And the heaven departed as a scroll when it is rolled together, and every mountain and island was moved out of their places.
As far as radars, how do we keep having these surprise comets? And if we're having so many more of these things, why would they shut down all of the world's observatories when, you know, they say, by the way, their comment goes, well, don't worry, just because we shut them down don't worry, the government ones are still working. So we've still got the most important ones working, and, you know, they're monitoring the situation.
That isn't obvious at all.
When all of the other ones, the regular Joes, they're all closed down for CV-19, when a lot of them are run by one person at a time. Like an actual one person can run one of these things by themselves. There's no reason to social distance. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever.
So they told all these observatories, yeah, you only got one person working there, but you still need to socially distance more. Just shut it down. So they shut them all down. That way only the government ones can track what's coming. So only the government leaders and their elite people that they serve will have updated information that is correct so they can survive this event, while the rest of us regular folks are in the dark. I'm sure they'll leak some information to the masses, but it's going to be all backwards and false, which we are all used to by now. Just watch that movie Greenland. It'll tell you all about it. Everybody, just from that one piece of information alone, completely dismantles this entire COVID-19 narrative as a virus that the whole world needs to watch out for. I mean, come on, they had to shut down observatories that are only manned by one person. There's no need for social distancing. Nope, all lies. This COVID-19 thing is being used to lock down the world and to minimize human movement around the planet because of these incoming asteroids. So the elite can move around more easier and plan their final destinations as these things get closer and closer, where they are able to pinpoint exactly when and where they're going to hit.
You see what I'm saying?
Exactly. And the thing is what you're saying was confirmed to me by the contractor friend that I have that does a massive contract with the Pentagon. And he's been following this for, I don't know, about 12 years and knowing all about this system coming. And he was told as well, they shut these down because they didn't want the public knowing. They shut these down because they didn't want the public knowing. Now, his own words to me, we had a private conversation recently, and his own words to me was that roughly either, and he said it like this. Now, Glenn, my Washington source says by September, everyone will know. He said, well, it's either August or September. He said, and if it's not being able to be seen by August or September, then it would be in the spring of the year.
It's interesting he said that. So this event could represent the rapture resurrection taking place in the fall with possibly the Feast of Trumpets, or a spring rapture, which will coincide with the spring feast days.
But as far as with your own source that you have with the auditor, has she given you any more clues, Adam, that we can kind of glean from?
Okay, so here's the thing. There's no time frame, but it's part of this year's budget. If they wanted to spend just an absolute ton of money, especially with right now, how would they hide that? Well, it's kind of funny because we've got the whole, I guess the trillions of dollars being given out for the stimulus. So that would be one way to hide it, I guess.
When this whole COVID thing began, we started going into debt at quantum speeds. Not just quickly, quantum speeds now. And we're seeing a whole bunch of wealth disappearing at quantum speeds now. Huge amounts in short periods of time. And they're hiding it in these stimulus packages and many other things. That's why a lot of business people and people are not receiving checks, because your money went towards the preparations for the elite, for the final surge or the final phases of the compiling of their underground stuff. And this is why we're also seeing a shortage of just about everything you can buy at a store now. Take, for example, toilet paper. We don't buy toilet paper from overseas companies. No, we make it right here in the United States, and it's very easy to make. And what happened to all the toilet paper? Unless the toilet paper is being produced right now, and they're limiting the amount of toilet paper we can get here, us regular folks, while 95% of it's being shipped on the ground now. Perhaps that's what they're doing with all different types of products and goods. They are producing it all and moving it all underground. Cattle, meat, everything. They are taking all the food and resources, and all they're leaving us is a bunch of half-eaten chicken bones.
This is the scary part. There's enough people in the government that know about this that we're not crazy. There's enough people that know that they can't really do anything about us, doing this.
And this is probably why this video I made here and ones like it are still up.
I talked with Glenn. Glenn said to me one day, he said, a lot of things I go based on probability. He said, because I'm watching what's happening internally. He said, like, for example, your old office, which he's talking about the CIA headquarters, is being moved. He said, we are moving assets from Washington. Most of them are going out to Colorado Springs, Colorado. And that's where the majority of all the assets are being moved to. And oddly enough, my FEMA source, who's an engineer for FEMA, said that the reason why they're moving everything out to Colorado is because we're going to be ripped apart here in the United States. Washington, D.C. is going to be totally decimated. And so therefore, Colorado Springs will be the new capital of the United States.
So you realize that there's stuff that backs up what you're saying. Do you see the secret drills above Washington, D.C., where they're swooping in with helicopters and picking up as many people as possible? We know this for a fact. Anybody can look this up. We've documented it. It accidentally leaked out because people asked what the budget was for. Where are these millions of dollars going? For helicopter fuel. And they ended up busting that out, and that came out about 5 months ago. So Washington, D.C. is doing all these crazy drills, picking people up. You look at about a year and a half ago when California had the drills where they were picking people up off of the top of skyscrapers. Arizona, there was New York, there was Chicago, there was Texas, and they've got video of this. That wasn't conspiracy theory, that was documented proof. That was literally there right in front of us. Everything with this, now we're all at home, we're all, and it's coming back. Some could say it's for the election, but think about it. They're literally starting all the lockdowns over again. We're going to be locked down within 2 weeks.
And these lockdowns that are coming are permanent. In fact, while I'm making this video, I got a phone call from my wife informing us that the school district that we are in, they have made the decision that the kids will not return to school until January. And we know they're not going back to school in January. This is a permanent lockdown.
Almost guaranteed.
Our FEMA source said that the reason for the lockdown that's coming is because they know that the disasters are coming, but she also said at the same time they will be using tactical nukes on our nation while some of these asteroids are hitting in order to cover up what's going on there.
They will be using tactical nukes to kill off mass amounts of people who were unaffected by the meteors. Look, everybody, the world elite, they know they're supposed to get down to 500 million people. They are banking on this asteroid shower to do most of the work for them. And wherever the meteorites don't hit and there are people who survived, they will fill in the gaps with some nukes. And I believe the majority of these nukes are going to be used on America.
My uncle, who is also retired law enforcement, worked with the FBI, he said, and it was confirmed as well what he told me recently as well from my FEMA source, that the disaster in America will be so massive compared to the rest of the world that the Chinese are already waiting and ready. They will come under the guise that they're bringing humanitarian aid, but they're only going to come after the pilfering and the violence between the citizens that are left have spent all their bullets as much as possible. They will come in as if they're offering humanitarian aid only to take over the nation for its natural resources.
So after it's all said and done, China will come in here and kill off any remaining stragglers here in this country, as we have seen throughout dreams and visions.